about the intricacies of different things.
Okay.
So it's really
We've met. Yes, how are you? It's
just
good to see
yes.
you.
Where is this going?
Sure, thanks.
Oh, yeah.
Since I work in residential, I gotta get up and downstairs.
Cute with the teddies.
I had one kid on Easter, they were like, he went and got him a suit and he said,
Right, right. Exactly.
yet. Dr. Heidi Gullett.
Here.
Dr. Charles Modlin is also excused. Malak Rashid? Rashid, right? Is that? Okay. So with a name like Naila, I have to pronounce it correctly. Levine Ross.
Here.
Glenn Shoemate is not here as of yet, but I'm sure he's coming. Yanela Sims.
Here.
Eddie Taylor.
Here.
Sheila Wright.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. I want to start with the moment of silence and reflection with First Leadership.
Certainly. There's so much going on in the world and in our nation and our country that it's challenging to provide an overview or reflection for this meeting. If there's one thing I believe, it is that we can pause to always reflect on the potential power of the leadership of the case. The leverage for change, equity of opportunity, and betterment of our community is fundamental to the work of the case. And the work for change is often difficult. We know that we are often confronting provincial cultures and explosive issues of race, class, education, employment, housing, healthcare, violence, and social mobility. From its inception, CASE has always sought to seek opportunities for change with care and with patience. So my only reflection and thought for the opening of this meeting is to implore us to stay the course. Your leadership on so many issues that affect our communities is the highest form of public service. And I believe I speak not only for myself, but for the county executive, as well as the county chief of staff who has joined us today, and the residents of Cuyahoga County, when I say to you all, thank you. Just pause and reflect.
Thank you, Clerk Bird. With that, we'll move on to a public comment that was received from a Mr. Don Bryant. This was received on February 22nd, 2025, and I'll read the comment or the message that was shared. To whom it may concern, at the last meeting of the Cuyahoga County Council, a blatant racist abduction occurred. 2 people caused alleged disruptions at the start of the meeting, were treated vastly differently according to their race. An African-American man who made a wailing sound at the start of the Pledge of Allegiance to the U.S. American flag was quickly silenced by police action. 2 officers were at his side in seconds. He was wrestled to the ground by more officers, handcuffed, arrested, and jailed. 5 or more officers were involved in his abduction. A second verbal disruption followed the first. It was spoken by a white man. It was directly related to the treatment administered to the black man. It continued for at least 1 minute loudly. 1 officer was assigned to the white man. He told him that he would have to leave the meeting, calling him sir. He did not handcuff the man. He barely touched the man until they reached the exit when the officer put his hand on the man's shoulder. The white man told the officer to remove his hand, which he did, and refrained from any further physical contact. The officer told 2 other officers to escort the white man from the premises. I ask that you investigate and file a public report regarding this occurrence. In 2020, Cuyahoga County declared that racism in the county is a public health crisis. County Council on Tuesday, July 2020, unanimously approved this declaration, which is intended to help address systemic racism that results in shorter life expectancies, poor health conditions, lower incomes, and other adverse effects that disproportionately affects Black people, end quote. Part of the legislation approved by Council on Tuesday requires an equity commission to review county policies and programs and a citizens advisory council on equity to review and provide recommendations to reduce disparities between Black and white residents throughout the county, end quote. If there is no investigative arm to the equity commission, then please advise me as to whom I should address my complaint. Sincerely, Don Bryant. Mr. Bryant was made aware that there is a distinction between CASE and the Equity Commission. The next state of action is challenging for this situation because there is a complaint against one of the gentlemen. But I wanted to bring this and be sure we shared this with you all so that if there are things that we would hope to see or act upon or provide a recommendation around, we would be able to do that. Clerk Byrd, I know as our attorney, as an attorney, and as our so if there is more that you would advise of us, given that the incident likely involves a different body than this one.
So I will say this, and I will defer to Victor if you have something to add in all seriousness as our legal attorney for this body. The incident that's being referenced, one of the individuals has been charged criminally, and correct, Chief Janice, has been charged criminally for one. For two, this sort of investigation does not fall, I don't believe, within our purview as this body, as the Citizens Advisory Council on Equity. If folks are unhappy with what's being, there are different avenues for where this individual could seek some sort of answers. One being, and I only know this because I was this at one time, the agency of Inspector General. When I was Inspector General, this is something that would fall under there if they felt as if something were not being handled appropriately by a county employee, or obviously any other sort of legal action, although I don't believe what he's alleging here rises to the level of a crime. But my advice to this council, and it would be up to you, would be to respond to this letter, thanking him for his concerns and explaining that we are not the appropriate body by which to give advice or redress. Victor, I don't know, as an assistant county law person, what's your title, Victor? Assistant county law director?
Assistant Director of Law.
Oh, excuse me, okay.
But there's about 20 assistant directors.
I don't know if I've misspoke or if there's anything you'd like to add or change.
No, I concur with everything you've said. Without divulging any attorney-client information, I can tell you that I do know what incident you're talking about, and I watched the county council meeting, and I watched the committee of the whole meeting of that day as well. And if any of the members would like further information, I would be happy to provide that, and as far as what the legal situation is and what the matter was about.
Chief Janice, do you have anything you want to add to what I said?
I don't have anything that I want to add. I'll note that this letter came in February, and it sounds like we have actually already responded, if at least verbally, correct?
Correct.
So we were being responsive. No, I don't have anything more to add.
Okay.
Are there needs of this body in response to this?
I would like to get more information what occurred, so I'll talk to you after the meeting.
Sure.
What I can do as well, Member Sims, is I can have Julia send a link. The meetings are publicly available. They are recorded. They're viewable online if you'd like to see that as well. And that's public information.
Can we have that shared with the whole body?
Of course.
The link that.
Yes, that's not a problem.
Thank you.
But I'm with Chief Janice. Right? February 22nd, it's a little dated at this point. If somehow there's a way to reach out to this individual, it might just be because it's public. This snippet, right? Read into record, acknowledged, and the rest will take care of itself in its proper course.
And that a representative of this body had informed him we were not the appropriate body. This was not the appropriate body for redress.
Thank you. And I just want to say I'm grateful to the community member for raising the concern of their observations. With that, I'll turn to Chief of Staff, Mr. Janice.
Thank you,
for your message.
Eric. Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you to members of the council. Nyla, when was the last time this group met as a body?
We met in March 29th, yes, and you were here with us.
And I was
then.
here.
Yes.
I couldn't remember what day it was, but it was certainly after January 20th.
Yes.
And so I think I might have spoken to this from a general point. got together as a group last time. The Ronayne administration continues to work through the blizzard of changes, of directives, of executive orders, of court cases associated with those orders that are all ongoing at the federal level right now. We're working in conjunction with the law department, speaking in conjunction with the council. I met with Council President Miller today about this. And so I guess what I would say to this body is we are continuing to do our due diligence to understand what, if any, impact some of these orders have as it relates to the work we do here at the county from a DEI perspective. The short answer is there is a lot of ambiguity. There's a lot of inconsistencies in applications of the executive order. There are already lawsuits being filed by state and local governments clarifying the order, declaring it unconstitutional. We are working diligently with our law department to make sure we monitor all that. I actually made a phone call to the executive director of NACO, the National Association of Counties, to talk through with him what he had been hearing from other counties throughout the nation and what, if anything, they were doing about it. And there's a lot of uncertainty nationwide. It's not just here, it's not just in our community about what all this means and where it might lead to. As it was said to me, quote, the goalposts move every day here. So when you think you might be doing something correctly today, it might be different tomorrow. We are taking these. We are taking this challenge very seriously. Doing an inventory of all of the work that we do that touches diversity, equity, and inclusion, and federal government, whether it's federal formula funding streams, whether it's HHS funding streams and programs, whether it's grant applications or contracts we have, to try to interpret what it means for us and what it means for the work we do. I wish I had answers for you. I have more questions than answers. I've been speaking to my peers this week as well. Spoke to the county administrators in Franklin and Lucas County this week. I talked to the Hamilton County administrator tomorrow, just to see what everybody's learning and what they're doing. All that is to say, I just want to continue to reassure this body that we remain, whatever adjustments we have to make, rules we have to follow, things we must do, things we don't believe we have to do. The core principle of this administration of diversity, equity, and inclusion absolutely remains. And that we are committed to the work and committed to the principles of that. A lot of uncertainties going on across the country as it relates to local governments. You know, something is, I'll give you an example that was discussed today with the law director. Seeking federal dollars in order to extend the runway out at the county airport. With language in there that says, you know, do you have a DEI program? How do you respond to that? And, you know, there are penalties for being dishonest. On the other hand, does that mean you're not going to get a grant if you say, yes, we do? And what are the legal ramifications of each? What are the policy decisions we have to make? And frankly, also, what are the political calculations we need to make, you know, and including what I say is our principles of supporting DEI work. It's quite foggy right now in terms of how the county does its business. We're continuing to try to gather information and understand. But while we do, we're continuing to do the work that we do. Lenora is continuing to do the work of her department that she does. So that's point number one. And point number two is this administration remains committed to the effort, regardless of all the noise in Washington and to a lesser degree in Columbus. And I want to make sure you heard that from me directly. We're grappling with this. We're struggling with it. We're trying to understand what it means and what, you know, how we might have to adjust to things. We don't have answers for that yet, but none of that changes the core principles of what we believe in. So I'm happy to come back every quarter as this group meets and try to update you as best I can on how we're proceeding with that. There are lawsuits that have already been filed that may determine whether or not, for instance, an executive order related to DEI or some other subject matter is constitutional or not. But in the meantime, we're going to continue doing what we do, and most importantly, continue to believe as a core principle of ours that this work's really important. And we're going to figure out how to do it, no matter what. I think that's, yeah.
Just a quick question. So the conversation that you're having with other administrators or counties around the country, or just here locally?
Starting here, although I do have a couple of other colleagues across the country that I may call. I've met I think it's Fairfax, Virginia. They obviously have a lot of federal work and federal companies that do work with the federal government. So I'm going to reach out to him. But right now, it's been with my peers within Ohio, the large counties.
Have you had any indication of any clawback of existing dollars that we might have?
Not yet. There has been some fits and starts as it relates to grants that were already awarded and obligated by the prior administration. Some of them have been put on pause, or there have been fits and starts, but we continue to monitor that. The other conversation I'm having is to my colleagues, what are you doing with your DEI offices? How are you continuing the work? Are you making any changes? And the answer, by and large right now, from the folks I talk to is no, not yet. There's so much uncertainty, we need to see how this all shakes out.
And are any of your colleagues having conversations, or have you heard of any, are you seeing any local lawsuits? I know the states are suing. I know the organizations are. Are you seeing it at the county or city levels as you're talking to your colleagues?
So I will not be able to talk specifics, but I believe the answer to that is yes. I do believe there have also been lawsuits filed at the county level, and my guess would be also at the municipal level.
Okay.
But certainly there have been a band also of attorney generals across the country, not all of them, obviously some of them asking for clarity with respect to the executive order, or frankly pointing out where they think it's either illegal or unconstitutional. So much of this is going to be fought out in the courts.
Yeah, no, so my last point I would just say.
Remember, right, just to piggyback on what Chief Janis said, and at first I was like, no, but he reminded me in a recent meeting there are for sure local city levels who have filed suit. We did learn that within the state of Ohio, so that would be public.
Well,
So
and
there
across
is
the country.
Yeah, as well as across the country, I do recall.
So the only thing I would just say is, as you are having these conversations and you go back and you meet with the executive and you're speaking together as a leadership team, you know, just remember of all the dictators we've had in the history of our existence, there's been no country better positioned to fight one. Our democratic system is relatively elaborate. It's not perfect, but it's elaborate, and it is the most progressive that has ever existed to fight what is happening right now. So I'm just saying, remember to use our tools.
I appreciate that perspective a lot, and that ultimately will be a conversation we'll have to have.
Is there litigation that has resulted in injunctions or limited scope of some of these executive orders to date?
Boy, I don't remember specifically related to DEI, but there was one just this week on tariffs, where the president's executive order was declared illegal for most of the tariffs that had been imposed. So I don't recall whether or not, if in the analysis they've gotten to that point with DEI.
Yeah, they have. My understanding is that they ruled on it, that there's a permanent injunction on the tariffs.
On the tariffs,
Tariffs,
yes.
no, on the DEI.
Oh,
talking
DEI.
about DEI.
I don't think
I don't
we've heard
think
anything
they've
on
ruled on
DEI
DEI.
yet.
On the tariffs, yes.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that will be appealed and make its way.
And what's going on with Harvard? They just had a hearing, didn't they? I know it's not a government.
I believe
On their international.
on the
students.
international students
Yeah.
being able, but I think I just read this morning something with the international students being fearful of like doing something with graduate graduation.
Okay.
So it's still very much an ongoing.
Yeah.
But big up to the one Ivy League school though, well.
Prior to
Oh,
that,
that's real.
prior to the last day or two, they had been focused on funding dedicated to universities like Harvard. Just in the last day or two now, they pivoted to students. And so, again, this is part of that uncertainty. Stuff's coming at everybody fast and furious.
But Eric, to go back to how you started with the runway expansion, listen, and I'm fine being on record saying that this is utter nonsense, right? All that's going on, and Sheila's point, these battles have raged, and they should rage, and good should prevail, right? Ultimately, and what's right should prevail. But
Certainly hope.
if you had to answer that question today, so whether or not, because I dislike the dance that higher education is playing, changing DEI offices to offices of inclusive excellence, changing committees to committees of culture and belonging, right? The words are still fine, but they don't go to the point that we've all made and know to be right. But if you had to answer the question today on that application, how would you answer it today?
If we were answering it on an application related to a grant, that's
have a
part of the
DEI
struggle.
office,
You have a DEI office, and of course, you can't answer that untruthfully. We've actually talked about, do you stipulate that you are in compliance with current federal law? So that is a tough question to answer. You don't want to answer untruthfully, but what happens if you do? Part of the penalties that have been associated with this executive order are treble damages to the individuals that actually sign them. So we're trying to sort that through. That's literally the conversation I had earlier today with the law department. And right now, we're just trying to take inventory. We're asking anybody within the executive branch of the government to forward any grant requests, applications, proposals, anything through the law department so we can try to make those considered judgments.
And I appreciate that answer, and I understand why it's so here's what I would say. For me, not that I speak for anybody but me, approval is provided to not cause yourself harm, right? If an airport runway expansion is a good thing, let's do no harm to what is a good thing and make adjustments that are necessary, because this, in my view, short-lived, hopefully is short-lived instead of unfortunate circumstances. So I'm with do no harm, create opportunity and improvement for folks, and swallow hard the language that we have to live with.
Well, and we're evaluating that, but we're doing it under the principle of do no harm and still hold true to our principles.
Yep.
It's just incredibly complicated and tricky. I wish it was easy.
But you gotta be here to fight,
I appreciate that.
you know?
I understand.
And at the end of the day, to Eddie's point, hopefully, prayerfully, this is short-lived. And we need to mitigate as much of the wreckage along the way that we can to survive, so.
I fully appreciate that point, and we've had those conversations on a weekly basis.
So just if I may,
Yeah,
Eric,
please.
just Member Shoemate who just walked in, and in fairness, a good attorney will say I have not read the 7 pages in detail because he just handed it to me, but I believe he shared it with Lenora as well, and it looks like it's a consent order out of the District Court of the Eastern District of Kentucky, Federal District, and it's Mid-American Milling Company versus the United States Department of Transportation, DOT, and the agreement basically says that based on what the parties stipulated, what that means in a legal sense is based on what everybody said really happened and what everybody agreed to. The court is holding and declaring that the use of DBE contract goals in a jurisdiction where any DBE in that jurisdiction was determined to be eligible based on race or sex-based presumption violates the equal protection component of the Due Process Clause of the Fifth Amendment. And therefore, the defendants cannot approve any federal, state, or local DOT-funded projects where DBE contract goals, where any DBE in that jurisdiction was determined to be eligible based on race or sex-based presumption. I look at you because you know we worked on that, Stephen. So this was filed and came down on the 28th of May, where they've just done what Eric is talking about. We knew that
Aren't those past acts? Do they apply to future acts?
Yes,
Member Taylor, 7 pages. You guys just-
And I
You
apologize,
wanna share
Madam
that?
Chair, I
Is
did
there an
not,
electronic version of that?
We can, if
I have an electronic version.
Yeah.
okay, I was gonna say, cause I would have to get on Pacer and figure out my Pacer account, and if he shares it, if not, I will take this back and have Julia scan it, if I can keep this one, and we can scan it and send it out for certain. And Victor, will you share it with, I'm sure, Rick is monitoring it, but will you share it also? It's, just so you, it's in, Mid-America Milling Company LLC versus, DOT, and it's out of the Eastern District of Kentucky, their central division.
And Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to divert us down to
No,
a
this is
legal
important,
conversation.
please don't apologize, this is important.
My point I wanted to make to you all is we're trying to navigate a pretty tricky thing while still holding true to our principles, and that hasn't changed.
Other questions for Mr. Janice?
I guess my only question is, in some of these conversations that you're having, and not to politicize it, but are they bipartisan conversation? And is there any support from, say, like a smaller municipality that may be, contrary to what this, administration's political beliefs are? And the reason why I'm asking that question, because obviously, and I was in Washington a couple weeks ago, and I talked to some senators that were Republican, I'm just put it out there, and they understand the challenges that their constituents are faced with back here at home. So I'm wondering, even if it, may not trickle all the way down to all counties, or any conversation being held with, from the bipartisan.
I think eventually we'll have those conversations, Ronnie. We're not at that point yet.
Okay.
We're still trying to figure out where we are and what we're dealing with and what our level of risk is and how we handle it and how we measure that against what we believe in. And I think as we have that conversation, depending on what course we take, there'll be that opportunity. Part of my rationale for calling my peers is to find out, what are they doing? Are we approaching this the same way? Are they thinking of something we're not?
So specifically, the peers, are they bipartisan? I guess that's my question.
Well, I call the big metro counties.
Yeah.
They are all Democrats.
Okay.
And the reason I call them is because we share a lot of common
Gotcha.
issues. We are the same size.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yeah. But NACO is a nonpartisan organization for Democrats and Republicans, the National Association of Counties. So,
And I recently read something, Ronnie, and I can try to find it and share it with you, where it said within the state, some of the local sort of municipalities, I think it talked about a local school district, I want to say it talked about one of the Adams Board, that I don't believe are in a Democratic, in one of the big 8 or the Democratic,
Yeah.
where they were sort of pushing back on some of these initiatives, but on a local, smaller level.
I think, related to that, the state of Ohio that has a number of EDGE, WBE programs currently for vote approval by June 30 is going through legislation which continues to authorize minority loans, EDGE. So they're basically saying eradication of those programs. I believe they're still funded at current levels that they had been, which I find interesting or strange, but positive.
positive, yeah. If it stays that way.
I mean, administration might walk the line, but the conservative legislature is supporting it.
And that's good news. You're right, Glenn. That's good.
This is an important update, and thank you all for the questions. I want to recognize our senior advisor, Sabrina Roberts, who's here with us today, and yield time to you if you wanted to make any comments.
I'll make it short. Listening to this conversation, I was just reminded, this morning about 8:30 a.m., I had the pleasure of sitting with 5 University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Moorhead Kane scholars. They're here for Emerging Leadership Summer Program. They have been hosted for the last 3 years by Policy Bridge and your former case member, Randy McShepard. This year, they're under the umbrella of YOU, Youth Opportunities Unlimited. And sat with them for about an hour, a little plus. We went over a little bit. And their project is investigating what impacts the economic mobility of youth in the Cleveland area. And boy, did we have some robust conversations. And when I sat with them, I started thinking about Nayla's comments about the appreciation for a body like this and the leadership within this body. The young people are the future youth sitting at this table. And I was so, like, my heart was just overjoyed because there was the hope right in front of us. And the level of engagement, the level of discussion was far more at that age than I could have had. So I was very just blown away. Hope just sat in the back of my mind, and I kept talking to them about what creates opportunity for people. And don't lose sight and get into your silos about really what opportunity looks like, because everyone wants opportunity, everyone wants to be happy, but the hope is in them because with this phone, the world is a lot smaller. They can communicate with someone in the UK, in Senegal, they can communicate and have real dialogue. So left them with a few challenges and told them about my trajectory, but I told them they're gonna be much better than I could ever be because the world is limitless now. It's open. And they had some really good ideas. And I talked about the book we probably all read, Who Moved My Cheese? We can't even fathom what their world will be like in 10 years. It's quick and they're so innovative. You know, you look at kids on, you're not supposed to use TikTok, but all those apps and they can quickly just pick up things. What we know to be a lawyer, doctor, businessman, they're the future Mr. Taylor, the future Ms. Rashid. But it's limitless. There's gig economies now. There's so many things we can't even conceptualize. So we had a long talk and they were so gracious, but it just reminded me they will be you. Giving of your time and service to community. I believe we have 70 boards, don't quote me, around 70. That's a lot of people, maybe 700 people that we engage, but it's the give back. It's the community give back. And whatever success looks like for people, success, I think, also has an element of giving. And so I'm thankful for you all to just tackle tough issues and hold us accountable for how we treat each and every person. And it doesn't fall on me that Ms. Underwood is presenting today on children that are left in our custody that are ours now. And just like those students, those 5 students, I want those children also to be people who can sit at this table and be wonderful contributors to this community. So I appreciate you all and thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, Mayor Blackwell.
Keep it brief. Sorry for being late. My assistant called in her son to the emergency room, and then my backup assistant said she had allergies and she had a headache. She couldn't drive, so been my assistant all day, answering phones and everything. But I made it here. I came in late, so I'm not sure where things ended, but I want to just quickly make a quick comment before we get into the meeting so that we run on time. But focus groups, listening to what Ronnie Campbell said, of course, Mr. Taylor and my colleague here to my right, who I have so much respect and admiration for. One of the issues that I'm having as we talk about focus groups is people are afraid and they don't believe. They don't believe because they don't know what's coming. The uncertainty and the fear is preventing them. Why bother? This is going to go away. You mentioned all the boards, quite a few. We are having a look at where we have equity boards, those are up in the air. NOACA specifically, I am the chair. Will we continue? There is a motion by a member who said we should get ahead of this from Lake County and get rid of the equity committee. So I look at this community's listen to the comments of the discussion, but my own interaction. People don't believe. Why engage when it could be aborted? Why engage when it could be defunded? And while I respect everything you said, Chief Janice, it is so maybe not. There's no definitive answer. Do people? We are public servants, and the people here, I think, are an elite group. All of us serve on multiple boards, and we show up, even if it's for 15 minutes, we're still trying to find out the freeway and get here because we have a commitment, because we're hopeful. And this is what we, some of us, raise our hand, take a pledge to do. It is what we've agreed to do in our professions. How do we incentivize and keep this work going when we can't even answer or give them any assurance or certainty to engage and put this kind of time in? I don't know if that's fair. And I have a difficult time. I usually am a good person of influence, but the people know that I'm not certain. They know I'm not a BSer. So to ask them to join this focus group, hopefully maybe it'll get fleshed out. Like, what do we ask them to commit to?
Mayor Blackwell, we will get to that conversation. We need to have it. It's necessary that we have that conversation. I will also say, one of the things that I've learned through my career, serving young people that people give up hope on. I have known hopelessness in the lives of marginalized people for my 20-plus year career, and I witnessed it in my brother's life that ended prematurely. The work of leadership in my mind is holding the flame of hope, holding and stoking the flame of hope. And I appreciate your comments, Ms. Roberts, and you like bringing those young people into this space to invite us, perhaps knowing that our hope is being drained by these realities, that we need that reinstallation of hope ourselves. So we absolutely have to talk about what it looks like to engage the community very explicitly around a certain intention to get community voice. But this is bigger than this survey, because the community members we most care about have been enduring despair and hopelessness long before there was any declaration of racism as a public health crisis, been living with it. And we sought to spark a new hope with that declaration. And now we too are feeling undermined. And that's the intention, right? Oppression exhausts. Oppression, it detracts from hope. It pulls away the community collective work and effort to dismantle it. And so that, I think, is what we're experiencing, this barrage of executive orders and legislative efforts intended to undermine our collective determination to dismantle a system of dominance and oppression that has been harming folks for 400 years. What we get to do together is rebuild some of that hope. It's going to take a lot of intention in our action. So we will talk more in this meeting.
Wonderfully said, as always.
I thank you, and I call on the ancestors. I just want to thank Ms. Roberts, Mr. Janice again for being here on behalf of the county executive. I am grateful for the courageousness to continue to lean in and try to figure out. I am discouraged by some of the preemptive compliance that we've seen from institutions we respect and have a lot of institutional legacy here in Northeast Ohio and around the country. What concerns me about the shifts in language is, does that impact intent? We convey our intent through our language. And when we start to retract language that is intentional, the people who end up harmed or at risk for being harmed are the same people the very legislation being weaponized right now was created to protect. So I'm grateful for the thoughtfulness. I will share a few comments myself before we continue with the agenda. Really just as a grounding for this body. When we were last together, we had hoped to talk a little bit about the subcommittee chairs that had been coming together and get engaged in some purposeful work, and then pulled back and met with subcommittees, and we had not had a chance yet to just share where we are as we iterate on our action steps in this public body, or in the space of this public meeting. So I do want to just share here where we have largely landed, and we'll invite members of the body who have been part of subcommittee meetings related to our efforts to really prioritize the work that that the case would do in this year of many transitions and changes, but also deep investments on the part of the county system. So I want to share just for this space that the subcommittee chairs had a series of meetings with the county executive. As many of you all know, we've had some gatherings together ourselves in order to discern what our priorities would be. Member Gullett graciously walked us through a couple sessions around systems mapping and just discerning what might be the priorities and focus areas for this body, and we've come to some conclusions out of that work. We also have a consensus definition that I will call still draft on how we want to define equity. I was privy to conversations in subcommittees around that definition, and so we want to make sure that we return to that as subcommittee chairs in a future meeting to just make sure that we are being as intentional as we need to be with our language. But I'll read that definition, draft definition, into the record right now. And so the equity consensus definition we've drafted is everyone is able to achieve their full health potential. This requires addressing historical and contemporary injustices and removing obstacles to health, such as poverty, discrimination, and their consequences, including powerlessness and lack of access to good jobs with fair pay, quality education and housing, safe environments, and health care. I will offer that we may have more to do to be as intentional and explicit as we need to be in this language, but we adopted this language from an existing body here in Ohio that maybe Member Gullett could say more about the body that used this language to really lean into the multi-factored ways in which discrimination, racism impact people's lives and health, knowing that we were established as a body under legislation really focused on racism as a public health crisis. Member Gullett, do you want to say more about the body that helped us?
Yeah, so there was a group of multi-sector representatives that came together over a period of time across the state of Ohio, so from all parts of the state, to really flesh out language that would help us have a common definition for which we can think about what it would mean to look at equity through a policy lens. And so that would ideally be what numerous bodies across the state would be looking at, so that we have a shared vocabulary. To Member Taylor's point earlier, and you have, when you were leading us as chair, really clear about the importance of words, and I think Chair Grimes, you brought that up multiple times today as well. This isn't perfect, and in many ways, it doesn't fully capture the impact of oppression that you were talking about previously. And it doesn't fully encapsulate the historical and contemporary structural impacts of policy and programs on the lives of people who have historically been marginalized. This doesn't capture the essence of that fully, but we're trying to have wording that helps us understand collectively why we are here and where we are headed. And so there's still work to be done to ensure that a working definition reflects what we're actually doing. But we are clearly here to address the impacts of structural racism, in particular, the way that that is manifested in this county over a very long period of time. And so we are not swaying away from that. And I would also say that we have centered a lot of this work around health, but it is not to the exclusion of any other components. It's been that's where the legislation sort of came from, And that's what a lot of this was built on, but this is not to the exclusion of any other components of this. Health just happens to be an intersectional place where a lot of social drivers of health and structural drivers of health come together and are experienced by individuals, neighborhoods, communities, and our population. So I will not take any more time. Happy to talk more as we go forward, but thank you for sharing that, trying to help us ground us in some, at least some common language.
Thank you.
Chair Grimes, if you don't mind, I love it, right, the equity description, but to start by using the words full health potential, that is limiting, right? The rest of it gets you to where you want to get to, but it narrows things considerably to start. Now, if that's our intent, great. If it's not our intent, not so great. So I would just ask that we, as you iterate this, right, consider that, especially at the very start. Okay.
And I appreciate you bringing that into the formal public meeting. I promise you, I have articulated that concern to our subcommittee chairs, and I think we all had similar concerns about the narrowing. So, but I appreciate you bringing it into our public discussion, and more to come.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments. So absolutely more to come. The subcommittee chairs will be reconvening this summer, and we'll spend some time returning to this. The other thing I want to share just in this public space is that our time together as subcommittee chairs, we arrived on a realization that this body has multiple levels of work that we are seeking to attend to, upstream, midstream, downstream. And we want to see both external action, but also continued accountability internally for equity work, and for the ongoing commitment to that, and wanting this body to be able to advise on the internal work. We also know there are multiple areas of investment and need in our county that this body should help to advise around. And so I want to name those here, again, in this public space. One being, we know the Central Services Campus, the replacement for our current jail, and the goal to create more humane conditions for people who are jailed. There's also the Children's Wellness Campus, the Center for Hope, Centers Hope Campus, thank you, that Danya Underwood is here to talk about, so we'll hear more about that in a moment. But there's also opportunities for collaborations on women's health, particularly in light of what the 2024 Project Noir survey and report have yielded for us, and a recognition that women of color who are in leadership seats are very much bearing the brunt of this moment of violence that we find ourselves in, social violence, policy violence. And so Mayor Blackwell eloquently spoke to some of those experiences when we were last together. So we know that that is a focus area that this body can likely partner with the Women's Health Commission to support and intend to partner with. There's also this ongoing need for a regional economic equity work focus. We know the economics of racism have a long-standing impact, and we don't want to turn away from that important investment. And then lastly, this need for cross-cutting communications, and the community survey we'll get to momentarily, which is where we really will first exercise our muscle in service to gaining community. But we also know there are data sources and analytics and research happening at the local level that should inform this body, our work, our recommendations, and there are needs for collaborative communication and cross-communication so that we aren't redundant in our efforts, so that our community does feel like these constant research efforts are heard, received, have an impact in terms of what is resulting from them, and we know we have work to do in that area as well. Thank you all for that. Any questions? I know you all have been spending time with these things in subcommittee meetings as well. Clerk Bird, anything that needs to?
No,
We'll move on to new business and the approval of minutes. We've had a chance to review minutes. Thank you to Ms. Garber, who gets us things right very quickly, right after our meeting. So If you've had a chance to review, we can get a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Schumate. All right. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Accused? Okay. All right, with that, I'm sorry. Thank you, the motion has passed.
Robert's rules sitting here.
Our
Just call me
attorney.
RR. Robert's rules.
Thank you, Clerk Bird. All right, with that, we're going to move on to a presentation from Ms. Danya Underwood, who is joining us from the Center's Hope Campus.
I can read a brief, if you'll allow me to.
Please.
And I want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Danya? Danya. Danya Underwood is the Executive Director at the Centers for Cleveland Christian Home. She is a licensed social worker and certified grant writer with over 20 years of experience strengthening nonprofits and advancing social impact. As Executive Director, and you are right, of the Centers Cleveland, we did some snooping around to find this information. She spearheads strategic initiatives, drives program development, and cultivates community partnerships to empower vulnerable children as well as their families. Ms. Underwood also has experience working for the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service in Baltimore, Heartland Human Care Services in Chicago, and the Lutheran Social Service of Central Ohio. We are thrilled to hear from Mrs. Underwood today about her work at the Center's New Hope campus. This groundbreaking facility aims to expedite reunification and kinship diversion for children in county custody. Ms. Underwood, thank you so much for joining us today, and I'm yielding the floor to you for your presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just, it has been truly encouraging just to sit through the beginning parts of this meeting. So one, I just want to say thank you to Case and all of the work that you do, and just really honored to be able to share what we have underway. Again, as we all are fighting for equity. And again, I think as eloquently said, that these are our children that I will be speaking about today. So really excited to, be in Cleveland. So, I'm at 11 months in now. So trying to find my footing. I can, get around without GPS slightly. But really honored to be here in the city, to doing such great work. As my bio mentioned, but my life career is dedicated to young people, is dedicated to creating a platform of equity with children that have been, at times are not offered that opportunity. So ensuring that they are able to fully access society and what society has to offer is my life's work. And, it sounds like a cliche, but I know that, one, the children deserve it, and I know that they can achieve all that we have in store for them, right? And that we desire for them. So I'm here to change the world one kid at a time, one community at a time. That's why you probably see my career in different cities, because we are not the only ones grappling with a youth residential crisis or youth in crisis. And so wherever my services are needed is where I try to go with the greatest need. And this was on the list. So I'm really honored. So I do have a presentation and some slides.
Looks like our IT people are getting it together.
Yeah.
But we have it in
I
front
will,
of us. Also, Donia, if that helps, each member has a copy of the slide.
Okay, great.
Oh, no, nobody has a copy except me.
Yeah, well, I'm good. I can start with a conversation with the slides. No worries. I could talk about the Center's Hope Campus all day. So one of the things that I do want to start out with is that, and I have my slides here. So what we may know on the corner of 114th and Bosworth is the Cleveland Christian Home. It's been there for, nearly 125 years. So in the 1900, right? And so we recently, in 2022, the Cleveland Christian Home was acquired by the Centers, who we all know being kind of a cornerstone in the community with behavioral health. And so we were acquired by the centers in October, November of 2022 in this effort to be able to provide a response to what we are experiencing here, which is the youth and residential crisis, right? And for those, I'm sure you are familiar, right? And I was getting more familiar with kind of the landscape here in Cuyahoga County, and particularly, let me just reassure you that we are not the only county dealing with the youth and residential crisis. It is a national crisis. We are not the only county where children have been sleeping in office buildings. A bulk of my career was in Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service, so right, a national organization, now Global Refuge, where I dealt with a migrant displacement and crisis, right? And so very similar. But, you know, my roots are from Chicago. That's where I'm from, right? And I can remember in the early days as a caseworker, there were children in the office buildings where we made bassinets out of file cabinets, right? So this is not unique. But what is unique is that this county is recognizing it as its top priority because these are our children. They're not anyone else's children, right? They're not DCFS's children. They have custody, yes, but they are all our children. They intersect with many systems. You think about the Board of Developmental Disabilities. You think about the juvenile justice system. Of course, you know, our child placement entity, but they think about the hospital system. These are our children, right? And so in order to, and the response to that is a systems response, right? And a true partnership. Again, this is considered the Center's Hope Campus, but this campus is, and I said this in our groundbreaking, we are building a facility and a campus for Cuyahoga County's children and families that they can turn to in a time of crisis, and where we are going to help them and navigate their situation and be the connector to said services or their family. Because the aim of this campus is not to build more, right? There's an aim to build more in different counties, right? To address our youth and residential crisis at a state level. But if we continue to build campuses like this in Cuyahoga County, right, we are just perpetuating the ongoing cycle, right, of children being in custody. And the overall aim is to creating a campus that is on a continuum from prevention to intervention. And that we are trying to also, through what you'll see through this in our Welcome Center, is to divert as many children as we can from the system. We're not trying to have more dependency cases. We are trying to reduce the number of children in care. And as any social worker would say, and that's what I am, a social worker by profession and trade, is that, you know, every day I try to work myself out of a job, trying to create opportunities for families to be sustainable, right? And to fully access what society has to offer. So as here, so yeah, we were the Cleveland Christian Home. We are now rebranded as the Hope Campus just as of late. So of 2024 in November, we did rebrand as the Center's Hope Campus. And as you can see there, we are still continuing the mission of the Cleveland Christian Home, which is really to fight for equity by healing, teaching, and inspiring individuals and families to reach their full potential. Really much of what this advisory board convenes on a regular basis to address in our community and broadly. Next slide, please. So the centers, again, the centers in the Cleveland Christian Home joined again in 2022. And really, I think what we leverage from the centers is the full continuum of behavioral health and child adolescent services that they have, right? So full psychiatry, you know, you have primary care, et cetera, that we are able to leverage. And within that, this youth and residential treatment for youth is, again, 24/7 support for kids in our custody at Cuyahoga County Department of Children and Family Services. but our services are a little bit more robust, right? So we do leverage the Center for Psychiatric Services. So we have psychiatric services on site twice per week. We do have 24/7 nursing, which is unique to youth and residential services. So they are not on call, they are actually on site to being able to respond quickly for children in need. Therapeutic and clinical services, we do have a residential school that is operated by CMSD. And one of the things that I'm really truly proud of is walking alongside our therapeutic and clinical services are our enrichment programming, right? They may not be billable services, but when I think about the disproportionate number of children, of Black and brown children that are in custody, not just in Cuyahoga County, but broadly, enrichment is something that is lacking. So when you think about exposure, our children have not been exposed to many things that we may have been offered to as children and that our children are offered and have access to. So it's not just attending Cavs games, but it is what, equine therapy. Many of our children have never, ever seen a horse in their life. And so understanding what does it mean to engage in pet therapy or equine therapy, and what does it mean to take care of an individual or take care of an animal, and really leaning on the creative arts community as well as our recreational activities. So there's a lot of enrichment that goes along, walks alongside our individual clinical services as well as our group therapy. So again, I don't need to double down on the crises, but one thing that I do want to state here is that, COVID did a number on all of us. It did a number on all of us emotionally, mentally, but it also did a number on our systems. So during COVID, there were many residential providers that got out of the work, many that right, out of the youth and residential space. They may still provide foster care, but you think they provided hundreds of beds available to the county to be able to access in their broader continuum to placing children. So that also crippled, I would say, the Department of Children and Family Services, because they did not have the number of available placements that they needed in order to place children, right? So we're still faced with it today. And so I'll say a little bit about what we're doing on a systems level at the end of the presentation. Next slide. Thank you. Again, our solution was to be able to provide a campus, right? So turning over a full campus. We started out with what you all may know as T-Suites, right? And so it was a response for the children that were residing in the Jane Edna Hunter building. So creating this radical hospitality where children were going to be staying for short periods of time, what we thought would be about 2 weeks, right? When we opened, we were quickly filled, right? As you know, just transitioning children from the Jane Edna Hunter. David Merriman, if he was here, he'd tell the story. He told us he would take it easy on us, but that didn't happen. Our first kid was one of the most challenging children that we many of you may have known through a news story. And it's great to hear that young man who was one of our first individuals, he had, kind of bumps in the road and fits and starts, but that child is in independent living. And I can tell you this, 2 years ago, no one would have thought that, right? But it took great partnership with the county exec, with DCFS, as well as the centers to getting this child the myriad of services that was needed. Some of them, unfortunately, needed to be out of state because we didn't have the continuum here in our county. But that is one of just a glimmer of of hope of what is able to be accomplished when you think about partnership. And so the solution was to provide a campus of a continuum that was a mix of emergency beds to ensuring that no child slept in an office building, right? Also a full continuum of non-secure to secure settings. So children had the ability to vacillate between the campus for what was appropriate. Because when you can build a campus, but when you build a campus that is maybe all emergency beds, what you may encounter are children that may languish in care and may languish in inappropriate settings. or inappropriate level of care. So building out that continuum. And then the other radical component to the solution was a welcome center. So right here, you will see the picture off to the right is kind of one of our renovated spaces, and that is actually the T-Suite Secure. So it is a secure setting, and we learned quickly that 14 days and an open unit was not the most appropriate setting for the population that we were receiving. So they really did need a secure and treatment setting that was about, we average, what we anticipate is like a 30-day length of stay, and we were staying within that, but right now we do have some challenging kids that we are looking for placement for at the moment. So the core components to the campus that I think for me that are radical, the one thing that I failed to mention is the radical part about this of being a public-private partnership. And actually the front door being co-led and co-operated with a private and public entity. I have been across this country and have not seen anything like it. You've seen privatization of, your child welfare system, but not being in the same space and working side by side and in lockstep to really tackling an issue. So what we've outlined are, again, this continuum of residential beds, and this is what is current. And so there would be more coming. There would be 2 more units coming on board. So again, we have our 2 emergency programs that would total an amount of 18 beds. We have intensive therapeutic beds right now. That'll be 6 beds for our girls. And then we have an open residential for boys. So that was one of the changes when acquiring Cleveland Christian Home. It was all boys before, and so we knew we would not be able to respond to the crisis if we kept it just a single gender. So ensuring that we, were multi-gender. And then in the future, the aim is to have some group homes, right, for children that are not appropriate for congregate care, or even those youth that are transitioning out, so we don't have to transition them into maybe homelessness if they're not eligible for independent living. And all of this is, again, to ensure that we're giving our children the next best step to adulthood. So those are the core kind of residential components. Then the other component that I wanted to mention is our Child Wellness Welcome Center. And this is got co-led, co-operated front door. So the easiest way for me to explain this is like picking Jane Edna up and putting it on Lorraine and Bosworth. So we'll be the front door for that with DCFS staff on site. So with case managers, social workers, the hotline, and other community partners. We are in conversation right now with Metro Health. We're in conversations with Frontline and also the Child Advocacy Center, Canopy, the Child Advocacy Center. And there's more at the table, but those are 3 that we are in communication and very close to confirming that they will definitely be on site when the Welcome Center is completed with renovations. And I'll share a little bit about, I'll share right now. The aim is to have the renovations completed in kind of summer of next year. So like around the end of May of 2026, barring any issues with tariffs and supply chain, right? And so in the Welcome Center, we'll have this rapid reunification team, right, to address these dependency causes. So parents that may present with mental health or, other behavior management services. It doesn't mean just because you're struggling in that, the DCFS needs to take custody of your children. It means that you need assistance. Jackie Fletcher was at a community meeting last year, and someone arrived to her and said, these case managers that you speak about, I need one, but I am not abusing or neglecting my children, right? And so that is what we want to get in front of, right? And so helping individuals with the issues that they are struggling with to maintain their children in their household, because the one thing we don't want is to continue with this kind of family separation that we see so often within Black and Brown communities. So how can we maintain children within their environment where we all know is better off? We know that children do not deserve, nor is it in their best interest to be growing up in institutional care. So the most least restrictive environment. And so this rapid reunification team would be 7 days a week, 9 to 9. When children are arriving either by police, they may walk in alone. They may have a placement disruption. But what can we do in order for, and they may not even be in custody, right? So what can we do to ensure that children are connected to family in preventing custody? And the hope is to have that completed within 72 hours. So I'm going to pause there. I know that I am talking very quickly because I do want to make sure that we end on time. But before I get into stats, any questions about kind of what I have shared thus far?
Can you talk a little bit more about the school? What kind of school activity? You said CMSD is a partner.
Yeah, so Cleveland Metropolitan, so they are required, right, to serve children within their jurisdiction, right? I will go back to those slides though. Okay, they are responsible for providing education for children within within their zip code, right? And so they provide instructional on-site. So we have 3 classrooms right now. We group the kids right now within a 4-year time frame, so that they are able to be adequately educated. And we do have CMSD teachers that are assigned through the district. And they are attending, can't remember their days of school, but their last day was Monday, where there are some other schools that may go beyond maybe the 190 days, and they're in 6 hours of instruction daily. Yep. Any other questions before I move on? All right, let me give you some stats and what we've been doing, what we've been up to since the inception of January 2023. We first accepted our first child in T-Suites, which is this emergency bed program for teenagers. So we have had 159 unique admissions and 123 unique individuals and youth served. And so as you can see, that would be a couple of folks that came through again after they were discharged. And again, I say no fault of their own. I had one kid just recently, he was in T-Suites and he came back and he's in the vestibule and I'm walking in from another meeting and I see him and I greet the youth and I'm like, but his face was so sad. He thought he failed because he was back. And I'm like, kiddo, it's okay. You're going to get it right the next time. Mm-hmm. It's okay that you're back. He's like, are you sure? And I'm like, I'm sure. It's okay, you're back. And you're going to get to your next best placement, even if we got to try it again. So I want to say that repeats are not failures, right? It's just that they went out and their next best placement or where they were discharged to didn't work out for whatever reason, but that does not constitute a failure. But that he can gain some more skills, we can do some more assessments, and we can partner with DCFS on locating what his next best placement is. And that kiddo particularly also went to independent living. So we're getting a lot of, we're averaging around children that were, I think, around 14 to 15 years old. And so we are seeing some older youth that are eligible and most appropriate for independent living. So the average length of stay is about 30 days for those unique admissions, and the median length of stay is about 15 days.
So the longest stay, 159 unique, 30 average,
yeah.
The middle 15. The longest is 3 months? What's been the longest stay?
So the longest stay in our admissions.
Trying to do the math on 150, but it's meaningful, right?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
just
it is
be interesting to know.
Yeah, but one of my longest days when I first arrived, that kid had been there a year.
A year.
Yeah. But that's what we had. Yeah. He wasn't in admissions though. He's part of that admissions, but he was in our open program. But yes. Yeah. So yeah, I think, the one thing that I will say from this data and with particularly with the T-Suites youth, is that from January 2023 through December 2025, it would be through March, but they're to today's date, or through March's date, of the 105 unique youth and those 132 admissions. All of this to say are those children that would have resided in an office building. So, I think that is what really hits home for me, and nearly 2,500 nights of stay would have been in an office
I
building.
don't know if I missed it, because I apologize, I stepped out to use the restroom. Is there kind of with the numbers that you have up here, an average of the age, of like what ages are more predominant? I know it could span across.
Yeah, we were averaging, the average age was about 14 or 15. I am seeing more older youth in our T-Suites, but we also are seeing just more challenging and more complex cases, right? I have a kid right now in T-Suites that has been with us over 120 days. So I personally get involved with children that have been with us longer than 30 days to understand what is impacting their length of stay. And again, our continuum of care in our county we're growing. We're just not there yet. And I'm not just talking about the whole campus, I'm talking broadly. So you think about this new level of care, it's called PRTF. So the Psychiatric Residential Treatment Facilities is new, right? Very new, but definitely a need for the children that we see that have some very complex trauma as well as some psychiatric needs.
Then what would you say, similar question, but for siblings? How often has the county been seeing where it's multiple children from same household?
Yes. Since my arrival, I have not seen a lot of siblings, and that's primarily that's credit to DCFS. DCFS is really trying to keep siblings together, and when they have large sibling groups, they're looking for foster placements and not anything that's emergency. So I think that's credit to DCFS prioritizing keeping siblings and children together and families together. So I haven't seen them in my time. I do have a sibling of a kid we served prior, right? But not the groups of siblings that you see. But we have, I think about 2 weeks ago, we had about a sibling of 5 arrive at the Jane Dettenhauer building that Jackie had shared with me. Jackie Fletcher, the Director of Children and Family Services.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes.
And the staff makeup, how many you have on staff, and do you have any like bilingual staff members as well?
Yes, I have a couple of bilingual staff members. I do not have those stats, but I know that there are a few that are they're fluent in Spanish, so I don't have any like fluent in sign language in any other languages that I know of at the moment. Our staff makeup demographics, I wouldn't do it justice if I had to give you a breakdown. But I will say that, like any other, we are struggling with workforce. I just need to be very transparent. We are, we have a recruitment strategy. We have a couple of recruitment firms. We're looking at different talent acquisition pipelines, even folks that are willing to do things on a PRN basis or a part-time basis and full-time basis. So providing this again, myriad of options for individuals to being able to raise their hand and say yes to do what is a challenging but rewarding work. So yes, I would say we have about, I think the last time I looked, I think we had 82 staff, but don't put that in the record because I don't know. Yes.
This is great. Thank you for the update. I know it's very early, but is there any thought around using someone that's, experienced it like longer term, also work there as an option if they're interested and train them to work in that facility?
Like our kids? Yeah. Our youth? Yes.
Longer term, obviously.
Yes. So that is one of the special projects that's underway with, you may be familiar with A Place for Me and their REACH board. And those are individuals with lived experience And so definitely looking to engage them in not just working, and they're not working there, of course, but even if it is, you think about kind of adjunct professors, or you think about guest speakers being able to speak within community meetings, or facilitating groups with our youth and our young people. Yes. Yes.
And then the staff at the home, I'm assuming you probably have like therapists and social workers, but what are some of the other jobs that people could potentially do?
Yeah, so there's a residential treatment specialist, so those are our frontline staff that are engaging daily with our youth and young people daily, so helping with their daily routine, or helping them with life skills, and managing kind of our milieu specialist. So managing the day-to-day environment with their youth, helping them with transition. We have nutritional aides to help with nutrition aides to helping with serving our food. We do have clinical. We have nursing. We have an open nursing position. So we have nurses, so LPNs or RNs. We have some administrative positions like managers and supervisors. Let me see what other vacancies that I have that I can rattle off the top of my head. Security specialists, so we call them safety specialists. Yeah.
And these positions are posted on
Yes.
the website?
Yes, they are posted, yes.
So are those people employees of the centers then?
They are employees of the Centers Hope campus.
Okay.
Yes.
Not contracted?
No.
workers.
They're employed, yes. So I would, again, I know we cannot do this work alone, so I just wanted to provide the stakeholders that have been really championing this work. And as you know, county exec is at the top of the list when I think about a champion for this work. When I first met him, I was just like, wow, this is pretty impressive that the county exec is, this one involved, and this is a priority, and just so likable. So it was cool to see, arriving to the county. And then you have, of course, DCFS, you have David and Jackie, and then all of our representatives that are champions for the work. Because again, when I say our children, the legislature believes it as the same. And then these are all of the partners that are around the table on a monthly basis, really advising the work. We haven't called ourselves an advisory board just yet. That's coming. So hopefully there's another advisory board that they are really to commit to. But again, I think about the Adams board and providing support through not just showing up every day, but financial support, the board of DD providing financial support, and all of the other partners just providing their insight, because what we want is this standard of excellence. We're not building just another residential treatment facility. We are building really what I call a solution. And when you think about child wellness, because if our young people and youth are well, it creates strength in our community, where our communities are also well. So me arriving, I could not do this work without those partners, PEP and others that, if I have to pick up the phone and call, like, I don't understand this. They're there to help guide, and it's really refreshing to be, to feel that sense of welcome. And this is our photo from April 11th around our official groundbreaking for the entire campus. So we've been renovating our residential spaces. So again, kids are living there because the need is now, right? No one has time for us for 2 years to get this thing, running, right? We have brick and mortar, so we need children to be residing there, and as many children as we can accept, to ensuring that we don't have children sleeping in an office building. But this was the groundbreaking. Over 150 individuals were in attendance to hear about what we have underway. And so we have about 5 additional phases which include the Welcome Center, which includes our cafeteria. We are creating a brand new kind of school wing for our education, new day treatment rooms, multi-purpose rooms, different community spaces. We are going to, right now, we're an open campus, so ensuring that we are a closed campus, so fencing and other access points in order to, what we are building is really a state-of-the-art facility. And a large campaign that we are closing the gap on this large capital campaign. So this is just some of the building layouts that I thought I'd share with you all. So if you've been on 114th and Bosworth, this is not what it looks like right now. This is what it will look like. So you see kind of the greenery there, additional parking. I'm gonna stand up really quickly. So this building right here is where children go to school right now. They will now go to school on this wing right here, but this will be the Welcome Center, right? So we will now have access and kind of an awning here and a sally port, and there may be some additional drawings, but that will be the Welcome Center, where we will be co-led and co-facilitated with the Department of Children and Family Services. And then this on-site, what we do have a gymnasium on-site. It's not part of the renovations. It's pretty good shape. So, but I can do some fundraising around that. My development team knows. That's next on the list. So here goes some kind of more details around kind of what the space will look like. And so right now, you have to go outdoors in order to get to the residential facility. And so what we're thinking through the Welcome Center, that's where children will arrive, right? And if we do not find placement within, kind of with kin or with family, ideally, they would go into an emergency bed within our residential facility. So right there on campus, being able to transition them. So we will do all of our assessments, and we'll have the medical suite there for a medical provider. Next slide. Yeah, and these are just other pictures of, you'll see this fencing right here that we don't have now, but it will surround the campus. So yeah. Just more details that I think you all will have. I'm hoping you all will be able to have the PowerPoint. So if you all have any more questions around the drawings or anything that we're building, I'm open for questions. I'm actually open for suggestions as well.
We will distribute, Tanya. I'll have Julia distribute the PowerPoint to the members.
Yeah, and then
Have it.
yeah, one of the last things, and before I take Member Wright's question, is that when I think about the systems work and what's needed, we really are committed, all of us, the community. So the county, we are hosting a summit, a youth wellness summit on June 5th. And the focus areas are like on trauma, mental health support, housing, residential treatment, transition planning for youth aging out, and preventive care. But basically it is to align our strengths, identify gaps, and develop action planning. So that is to improve the overall health and coordinate our system in a better way. So that is June 5th. We do still have openings, so if you are interested, feel free to email me and I can get you connected pretty quickly. But these are also other slides of what the Welcome Center will look like inside. There'll be a child care center area for youth who need to be waiting placement. So, yeah.
Member Wright had a hand up before.
Yeah, I think I'll just take your email, and I have a few questions. You should be protected at all costs.
Okay.
Because you are a breath of fresh air in a heavy
Well,
lift.
thank you.
But I'm very interested in knowing what your capital stack and fundraising is looking like, and also who your partners are, and how we can help.
Will do, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am going to exit for the remainder of the meeting.
No, thank you for staying.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, just so deeply impressed by the the presentation. Just, I've been in some of the advisory meetings, and to see the progress that just keeps continuing is to just really be celebrated. This was one of the first issues, we'll remember that the county executive and Director Merriman brought to our body after the leadership transition with County Executive Ronayne coming on as executive. And so to see this level of progress in that amount of time is just tremendously impressive, and it's been a joy and pleasure to witness your leadership. So
Thank you. And again, I am really honored to just have the opportunity to present to you all, but I really am inspired and impressed by this advisory board and the body of work that you all have underway, and the commitment to equity, which I know that we all, I am definitely committed to, and it's good to see that the commitments still remain in the county. So thank you all. Take care.
all right, so Director Lockett, Ms. Coleman, forgive us, we will need to do your updates by email. And also the recap of Reentry Month that occurred in April.
What about the GARE update?
Yeah, I don't even think that's on here.
The comprehensive GARE update.
I would like us to take the last 10 minutes of our time together, really revisiting the community survey. I know there have been a series of conversations and subcommittees that have taken place, and when I hear what Danya is describing and thinking about, and just so curious for how community voice gets tapped in these moments, and yet what we ambitioned to do when we first conceived of a community survey some time ago, in fact, years ago, we are not moving as fast as Danya. I gotta find out what's the secret. But the world has changed so much since that time, and so we really want to honor that there is a lot of fear, hopelessness, distress, concern in the community, among community members, and as we engage them, we want to do so with an intent that is honoring of their needs and their realities, and our ability to affect change on their behalf. So, Julia, I believe, has organized this timeline.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I was like, what are you talking about? Yes, I did. I'm
Like, I did what now?
Yeah. It's been updated as of yesterday, most recently the Economic Development cabinets have to leave us, but I can also send you the updated version electronically because it's easier to maneuver, zoom in, move around. But that's a tentative timeline that has been shared with Dr. Wright from CSU. Approved it and has been very cooperative with our schedules and very patient. But
I think this is what we initially kind of conceived of as subcommittee chairs back in April,
yeah.
And proposed. So, want to open the floor to some dialogue about how, what if, is believed needed to engage the community around the priorities that I shared a little earlier, with these very public investments of public resources intended on behalf of all community members, but we know our Black youth are overrepresented in a system like DCFS, in a facility for long-term residential care, just as our Black community members are overrepresented in the jail. And so what does community engagement in the form of this survey, what do we want that to look like in this moment? And I also want to just give some space to Member Shumate, who has been, as chair of the communications subcommittee, really pivotal in trying to advance this effort that we envisioned so long ago now.
Well, thank you. I think, and Mayor Blackwell, appreciate your comments about the time, where we are. This is why maybe America in particular, but I view some of this is, and this has probably been a 2-year effort. Started before us around the table with the intent of how do we garner from the community beyond this group of 20 constituents and what we know, how else can we provide community to provide input into probably our 4 pillar areas, our 4 committee areas, subcommittees in particular. And I think, to me, it's meant to help the work and support the work that each committee is already doing, to provide some more feedback and analysis. And so, side of committee focus, which is why we're asking all the committee chairs to recommend and suggest people attend. In the first phase of this, focus groups to really garner information that can then be used in the survey. So the focus group isn't the extent, right? It's really maybe the first step is to organize ourselves. We can think about the questions we want to ask based on feedback from the community. It'll help us then write a survey that we then this fall, based on our timeline, out into the community feedback. There's also the fact that we contracted with also some timeline elements to meet and adhere. Prepared in alignment. It speaks to kind of a finality where we either they wrap up the work or will be incomplete in terms of having a resource from CSU to maybe help us complete this work. And so I know that there's, I said that all of us are overworked, right? And we have many things that we're tasked with, yet I think for our body and our work of CASE and your committee, the survey is really meant to help, not to her, but really meant to provide you, but then the overall case with some quantitative data shared for us, but then also for the community. So I think it's important work, and I guess I'd say, to committee chairs and members, it's like, where else can we help to some of the individual committees to focus group and have some of that work happen within the next 60 days so that the CSU research engage this fall with those surveys. So that'd be kind of background comments that share from it. And it's time sensitive, it really is.
A lot of kind of my thoughts or questions I was thinking about and seeing this timeline, and I thank Mayor Blackwell because it kind of ignited the different thoughts. I think the most critical part in this timeline will be the decimation of the community survey out in the community, and I think being really thoughtful of how we do that. When I think of often wide community surveys, whether they're on a city or county level, I think time and time again certain populations will always continuously feel disenfranchised, that the lack of access, but also I think this certain neighborhoods will have more increased distrust than other neighborhoods, and I think due to multiple valid reasons. So I'm thinking of how do we equitably and with intentionality ensure that it's disseminated and that we're really giving the most effort to the neighborhoods that don't often get heard across the county. I also am curious to understand too if it's on CSU to possibly, if it is a consideration for surveys to be in multilingual surveys. When I think of the top languages in the county, Spanish, Arabic, I think our following might be French after, don't quote me, but there's at least maybe the top 5 languages in the county it could be created into. We might not meet all languages, but I think especially when we think of congested areas where there's a lot of newcomers or immigrant communities like Parma, North Olmsted, Cleveland, West Side. So not sure if they've thought about that, but that's a consideration if they could think of that. And not sure, of course, we all represent our own networks of organizations, and partnerships and different entities we sit on boards on that could be used as like a catalyst to hopefully get the community convenings and surveys out, but also wondering if there's like anchor institutions like a Third Space, trusted places where the average person who may not otherwise trust the county but trust like a neighborhood institution, they could rely on to, like, if they have questions about the survey, they can ask and maybe build some trust in thinking about like the relational status. So if someone from, like, I just use it as an example, like Third Space or Kiramu House, these trusted institutions, if someone they know works there says this is a safe thing to take, they might be more likely to take the survey.
And I think that multi-language has been considered, but you're right about the location of where we go, right? And again, that's the hope that this body and others can share what locations are, who supporters will be. The examples you gave, trusted institutions, I think are very relevant. And I don't see communications or probably even committee chairs that can sort of look at locations or 20 locations. Like, what are the locations? How can we get there? Can we have friends or ambassadors or people who can make those introductions and connections for us? Certainly.
I think Membership and your comments, what they really elevate too is what's being asked of this body is to expend a certain degree of our social capital, right? And during a time where there's not a lot in the bank, so to speak, given all that is happening. And so I'm curious what's needed of this process so that that expenditure of social capital, to invite a Third Space to say, hey, would you help disseminate this survey? What's needed to feel confident that leveraging relationships either for focus group participation or dissemination of the survey, what's needed as members for you to feel a sense of confidence that this is something that I want to engage the community with my name attached, with this body attached to it? Yes, Yanela.
I think that what is needed is a clear understanding of the goal.
Yes.
So if we're asking people to participate, what is the outcome that we're trying to reach through doing this?
Possibly what could be the follow-up with the outcome. Some people might be like, okay, well, this is your potential goal, but then what comes next? And we may not have that answer, but we can maybe give them a pathway of like, these are the possibilities of what this information could lead to.
Exactly. They want to know what's in it for them.
Yeah.
I see incentives, but they want clarification. What's in it for them?
So I think it had been mentioned before, like looking at upcoming projects, whatever those things are, and trying to figure out like, do these projects potentially lead to jobs, or do these projects potentially lead to services, or do these projects potentially lead to different ways of entity X, how it operates, and then maybe looking at that and thinking through how do we want those projects to benefit the community, and then I think looking at it that way to say, just because it will be able to communicate to say, hey, these projects are coming up. We're trying to understand how these projects can best benefit residents. This is the information that we need from you to figure out how best then to communicate that, to maybe incorporate some of those thoughts and ideas into the end outcome being, better job, better operations, whatever the case may be. So from my perspective, I think that we need to understand why we're doing this survey so that we can communicate that to the potential participants.
Add to that, that's what we see in the voter turnout. For example, my vote doesn't count.
Right.
Nothing changes. So we have to be very aware of that. People are feeling like that they're powerless. Their vote doesn't count. Doesn't stuff matter. Things are going to go the way they've always done it. It's just really just more performative than it being anything else. And so, but certainly I have my part of it. We've got to be able to address address those concerns. Those are real concerns.
And I think it, you know, to me, the hope and goal is, to that point, that your knowledge, your social capital will lend to shaping this, right? I don't think CSU can do this in a vacuum. I think you're really looking to say, what does the leadership committees really could be involved and provide feedback, input, shape a survey, and provide some of the direction. And that's what I think we've been trying to do. I think it's why Dr. Wright participated in, you know, a call with committee chairs. You know, I mean, another meeting with Dr. Wright to help drive the point home, but it's also, and it's not advancing, but I think it's advancing for the sake of this for a long time, and our resource from CSU is going to go away soon. Maybe not the right answer we want to hear, but we need what your concerns are, which I think we'll be able to note some today, and we need to have that conversation with Dr. Wright in the next week or the next 10 days. I'm sure we can try to arrange that. I know she's on vacation June 19th, so we can probably have it before then.
Much of what has been raised was discussed with Dr. Wright in the subcommittee chair meeting, so I think these were all a lot of concerns that were raised with her previously, and she's been very, very responsive to those issues. I think part of the challenge is that all the things, I agree with everything that's been said, and the point, what is the point, right, of this? But then how do people find out about the results? So we have this, I think they're contracted for this final report, but like what do we do with it is beyond just them putting together and summarizing themes and a final report. It's what do we do as a body that then is responsive and accountable to all the people who gave of their time and their energy to recruit people to respond and then the people who responded. So I think that's part, for me, that's part of our job as a body is we are along the entire continuum, but part of it is the accountability on the back end and the transparency with what we do with the information. Having done many surveys in this county from the health department perspective, a lot of times what we hear is, well, what are you gonna do with the information? Why am I gonna, it's the same thing that we've been talking about. But if we can give at least some guidance on a facilitated process on the back end with what we do with that information, and then we hold ourselves accountable publicly to that, I think that goes a little bit further to building trust and also showing that we are trustworthy in the way that we're asking for people's time and their energy. And they're trusting the process a little bit, that this is going to meet their needs as a community member.
Other thoughts?
So, Mayor Blackwell, do you feel you need another meeting with Dr. Wright, or you're good?
I got it.
Okay, Heidi?
No, I was just bringing that forward. I mean, I certainly can not BSing. I'm always transparent. I can get it done, but just understanding that, I just wanted to share that. But I don't
I mean, it's important part too for us to, what's the end in mind, right?
I'll get it done.
I would invite us, you know, we had a conversation yesterday in the Socioeconomic Opportunities Subcommittee about friction and like giving friction space in equity work, because what white supremacy will demand of us is urgency and perfectionism. And so what does it look like for us to move through what we know is a process that will have some error in it, right? But we want that error to have, to be able to inform our work, our process, our outputs, and not be forced error. And so that means friction, slow down. And so what I think we should do as subcommittee chairs and myself is take a look back at how have we defined the purpose? How have we described this? And is there enough clarity there for this body and its members and the folks we might invite to the process to go, okay, let me lean into this. So I think we can do that without a meeting. I think a shared document might be a way to approach it. And I would ask for Ms. Garber's help with that. because I think Dr. Wright is formulating ideas based on conversations, but we own this survey, you know? And so how do we demonstrate that accountability to that ownership in a way that honors our shared intentions? So I think that's a step that we can take in an effort to move the work. What I do feel some sense of urgency about is like, that's already down the road, right? So how do we engage the community around priorities and investments of this county, priorities of this body, focus areas of this body, so that things aren't like at completion and the community gets to help us understand. They may have sat in a focus group around the Essential Services campus outside of this space. How do we get that information so we know what we need or don't need? But how does this body engage the community around that Central Services campus, around the Women's Health Commission's work, around the work of the Hope Center, Hope Campus? I keep messing it up, sorry. The Hope Campus, because these are important generational investments of this community. And thankfully we have Adonia Underwood, who is leading that Hope Campus effort. And she is seeking additional perspective, and community perspective is essential to that and any other investment of the county. So I just want to help us ground ourselves in like the moment, because there is some urgency to the moment. But this timeline shouldn't be the sole driver for our urgency.
Yeah, thank you for that, because I was just, the intersectionality of what we all bring and what's important to us just feels like it's the inverse. It doesn't feel like it's aligned to the urgency, right? And it's like, look, either we get it done, because we need to just get it done, or are we here for real work on this? And does this even allow for the opportunity for that? Like, is this a space? Because sometimes there's just not space for it, unfortunately, if it's already out the gate. And I think that's where it might be a space, because we're in this space and it's like, well, we can make recommendations. What's the teeth behind the recommendations we make? There's been that all along, right? Incredible group of people. This is an incredible effort. But many of us, I think, are in other spaces where we see our ability to impact outcome differently.
Yes.
So we're already dealing with that, where we're kind of bridled. And then to do this with a community that trusts us, one more check the box just didn't seem palatable. And I'm not suggesting that's what this is. But, you know, she's already got the contract. These initiatives are already underway. I just feel like it would be dishonor community to come behind it and just say, well, this is what it is. So the question is, to your point, what does it mean to this body? And what ownership could we take if that's, you know, to just say, look, this is what we're asking you to do here. Here's our commitment behind this. We commit to come back to you to say this, or we commit to elevate what you had to say here, or we commit to create a platform so that your voices go beyond this, whatever that is that we can do. And again, I don't want to have to take one little thing and pound all our personal agendas to it of wanting to do good, right? But it seems to me like we we just have to be mindful that we're trusted people in this. Trust us, and they expect us to show up.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I think all of us probably, I know I felt maybe when Kenzie Creed, is my time here valuable? Is the work I do important, right? Are we making more progress? So that hangs over my head. Anybody here listen? Not this group, but right, those we're serving. And yet, before, and I took on the communications committee that already probably approved the community survey, right? So other members of CASE, they sort of said, this is what we approve, this is what we think is going to add value. There have been new committee chairs now saying, hey, Mayor Blackwell, take this on. Not picking on you, but as a new committee chair, right? Or, Heidi, I don't even know that you were.
I was.
You were. So,
I'll own it.
Who was the other new committee chair?
Colleen, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, Colleen Thomas. Yeah, so we sort of are.
Well, let's have some grace for ourselves. The world, as a dear friend of mine says, has changed 500 times. And the level of violence that people are experiencing right now, none of us could have foreseen this in 2022, I believe it was, when we first envisioned a survey of the community. And even then, there was now are we gonna just keep asking people stuff? Don't we have enough data? Don't we know enough? So, I'll say this, I am grateful for CSU's collaboration commitment. They did some labor for the case during the community conversations for no charge at all. And it was meaningful labor coming out of the community conversations. And we did see in the community conversations that the people most impacted by structural racism in a generational way, they weren't in those conversations. So this was really envisioned initially of the reality that there were not enough young adults, young people in those conversations. The themes that emerged, they didn't inform those. There were not enough impacting people. There were a lot of privileged folks, right? Like, even as a Black woman, I sit here with some privilege. I was in the space, right? And there were many of us like that. And so there's a certain degree of privilege that folks were part of the community conversations, and the desire to get the voices of people who are most impacted is what led us to the belief that a community survey would be helpful and necessary. And those are the people being crushed right now by the policy decisions that are unfolding, the economic shifts that have happened under our feet. And so if we need to rethink this, I would rather do that as a body than to rush without the shared commitment to this being the right work, or to let this be the work of a small body, subcommittee that just kind of says, okay, we'll take it, we'll run with it. Let's do the things we need to do to deliver on a shared commitment and some shared outcomes and commitments to the community if we're gonna do it.
Can I just add real quick? I mean, you kind of led into my thought that could we just give some thought to participants that are in the homeless community, as well as individuals who have been involved with the criminal justice system currently or previously. I think their voices are very important, and they definitely should be heard. So to that exact point, if we could give some thought to their participation as well.
Chair, I just tying this up, I know we're over time. I feel like, having been through the genesis of what drove this and the fact that our Cleveland State partners have been incredibly gracious and kind and given us a lot of support for which they were not financially compensated, and we are stewards of these resources too. And so I feel like there is I hear and I agree with everything that has been shared. I think this is an important component of some information. It's not going to be perfect. We're not going to reach as many people as we'd hoped. It's not going to have every demographic we'd hoped, but we can do due diligence to get as many groups that are typically underrepresented in these kinds of feedback opportunities reached as much as we can, to the extent we feel comfortable reaching to our own networks. But I do feel like we have a responsibility to act on this agreement that we have made with them, because it has been more than 2 years. And they have been very patient. And this is a resource we agreed to. And so I feel like there is some accountability for this body. So I just want to make sure that in a public forum I share that perspective. I'm also very sensitive to not ramming things through and leading into the white supremacist ideals that we are so at risk constantly of, especially people who look like me. But I do think we have agreed to this. So I think it's important on some level that we've got to do something here with our team and they've really worked hard on this. I want that to be really clear.
Yeah, so I want to say I support the idea of a survey for the reasons that you just mentioned, right? Like, you want to do good for people, and the people that you want to do good for don't have a voice, don't have an opinion, don't have a comment, do not contribute to that. So I fully support the idea. What I'm thinking about is, would it be beneficial to communicate out, just maybe in this forum, have some sort of presentation about, like, what are the projects that the county is working on, right? So that citizens know what those are. And then identify the stages that those projects are in and which ones we may be able to have the most influence on. Because in that way, we're looking at when we put out the survey, we can say, this is what the county is working on. And then we can say, at the stage that X project is on right now, this is what we might be able to influence. So if it's whatever thing it is, or maybe it's multiple things, and maybe one of the questions is, which one of these things is most important to you? And then the questions then kind of lead into, if it's the campus, what would you like to see in those, like, I'm not CSU, I'm not putting together the survey, but I think identifying the projects just so that people know what's happening, and then giving them the opportunity to itemize which one is important to them and what they would like to see in that, but also considering where we can influence, because it's pointless to ask a bunch of questions that we cannot influence, you know, based on those responses.
So I'm gonna just take a moment of personal privilege since I've been here since the inception and we're 22 minutes over time. And I'm gonna turn to our chair and my friend and my sister. And I am just gonna say that we as a committee, we honor you. That the end of next month is a big milestone in your life and your career, having spent over 20 years to which, and you know from where I come, so they are our children. And working with all of our children and stepping down with your leadership. PEP is missing a huge leader. I am so happy you are staying in our community and with us. And I value you. I appreciate you. And you know how much I think of you as a sister and a friend. And my baby sister to my right was nice enough and kind enough to even come with the idea that we wanted to present you with some flowers and a card and just say thank you, thank you, thank you. Me coming for a hug.
You overwhelmed me.
So thank you, Habiba. Seriously, thank you. And I just, you know.
Thank you. It's
So
a
that's what I
blessing
want to
to
say.
lead. I feel honored. There is a 5-year-old, 14-year-old, and 21-year-old woman all in me who is like, you doing what? You sitting where? You get to have impact in what ways? I don't know how that's possible, but yet it is. It's relationships. Y'all's trust means everything to me. So given that we are over time and I'm overwhelmed, what I will offer is Glenn, myself, and Julie, and Clerk Bird, we can maybe put our heads together around how we encapsulate our intentions around this survey so that 21-year-old Habiba gets a seat at the table. Because there are so many reasons that I might not have found myself here because of the problems we are trying to dismantle in this community. And so to have found myself in the seat I sit in at PEP, I just want you to know it's a tremendous gift and honor. And my sole desire in this community is that the voices of the most marginalized will be amplified and know that they are honored and valued and mean something to this community. So, thank you. I will, do I need a motion for R&R?
So moved.
Donnie seconded it.
We are adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you for the extra time. I appreciate you.
Thank you.